So don't believe everything that you see or read or watch on the internet, apart from this, of course. I was a man in a van, didn't have any friends.
The joys of being self-employed, man in a van. Welcome to the Roots to Revenue podcast. This podcast is in association with Jobber. Jobber is the software that I use to manage my own business for the last 10 years. It does all my scheduling, my invoicing and my quoting, but best of all, it gets me paid faster. If you want to try it out, free for the first 14 days without a credit card, use the link down in the video description. If you use my link, it'll get you 20% off your first 6 months, and it makes videos like this possible. In the studio today, I've got Richard Salmon. Richard, would you like to tell the viewers about the best way if you're thinking about starting your own business?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, super. Yeah, thanks for inviting me over, Robbie. And just a bit about me first. I started in agriculture. That's what I trained in. I was at Writtle University College in Essex back in the 80s. I didn't know what I wanted to do at that particular time, but I knew I wanted to be outside doing some sort of outdoor industry. So I trained in agriculture. I left Writtle in the mid-80s and I became an agronomist, which is advising farmers and growers of grass and other crops on how to grow grass in terms of what inputs to apply and how to get the best out of the crops. Then I joined an agrochemical firm to become an account manager, and then eventually became a national sales manager for a big agrochemical firm. But whilst I was doing that particular job, I came across other industries that were using our products, and that, in my instance, was the lawn care industry, and that was in 1999, and I thought, this is something I'd like to do. And we, as agrochemical companies, were merging with other agrochemical companies, and their opportunity arose for me to get out the business that I was currently employed by. And so I started up my own lawn care business. So that was in 2000. I ran the lawn care business for about 20 years, sold that in 2019. And since then, I've been involved in training and advising people that are starting up new businesses or want to get better at what they do within their current business. My specialist industry is lawn care, but whatever I'm going to talk about in terms of starting a new business would apply to any business.
What are the things that people would most feel on if they were going to be starting a business for the first time?
I think the biggest fault would be don't take it lightly. It's a massive change. It's not like an employed position where a lot of people are doing the thinking for you. I think when you start your own business, you've got to do a lot of thinking yourself, and there's so much planning that needs to go into it. But don't go into it lightheartedly, but make sure that you've got a plan in place, because lots of things can go wrong, or lots of things won't go according to how you think they'll go. So there's a lot of thought and consideration into going into getting that plan right before you even start to run your own business.
So a lot of people would know that there's a business, you would have to draw a business plan before you start your business.
Yeah.
And it should be more than just writing something on the side of a fag packet. What would you advise for the most situations for people to put into their business plan? Because if you go on to a marketing program, a lot of people will give you'll be drowning in advice.
Yes.
Does all that stuff need to go in or not?
There is lots of advice out there, and that's the first port of call is seek advice. Don't try and do it yourself. You'll have a gut feel as to how successful your business could become, or a gut feel that the industry you're going into is going to be right for you. But there is government help out there, so and you could pay a lot of money to a lot of people unnecessarily. But I would first of all go to the government. There are lots of government either help lines or websites, or there are short courses you can go on that the government sponsor. I think the current one is Signposts or something. But as each government comes into office, then it changes. But there's certainly seek help. Don't try and do it yourself.
Yes, whenever I first started, I did they called it the Go For It program.
Yeah. And
before that, I'd done an HNC in business. And I think just with the HNC in business, like going to night class to learn how to run a business was really useful, because the Go For It program, while it was good, they scaled over a lot of information that wasn't very in depth. I think a lot of young businesses fail because they don't understand the cost involved. Hopefully we'll talk about that soon.
Yeah.
What do you think are the key aspects of being in a business plan? What should a business plan have?
I remember one of the first mistakes, or I was certainly put right early on, but I was looking purely at profit and loss. And if you look at profit and loss, and you're going to sell products for £100, it's only going to cost you £90, you're going to make £10 profit. That's all very well, but what if all your costs come in the first month and your revenue doesn't come until the 12th month? So I think cash flow is really important as well to run alongside profit and loss. Don't just look at one thing in isolation. And that comes down to seeking advice from people that have been in business for a lot longer than you will have been, and getting the right advice so that you try and do as much as you can right first time. Of course, you're going to make mistakes, and we all make mistakes, and that's how we learn. But try and avoid some classic mistakes early on, and that is, don't try and do it yourself. Seek advice. It's not just about profit and loss, but it's also making sure, have you got the money to fund what you think is a good business idea.
On the subject of money, where do you think that? So, as a young business, whenever you go to the bank, it can be very hard to get funding to start your own business. Where do you think, or where's the best places for people to source funding to start their business?
Well, I think having a relationship with the old-fashioned bank manager is really important, but you need to have some relationship with the bank or somewhere that's going to fund you if you decide that you are going to need some funding to help you through your first year or two in business. So I think ally yourself with a particular bank, because they will probably ask you to submit a business plan, because if you're looking to borrow money, they're going to want to see some sort of bomb-proof business plan to show that at least you put some thought into it, so that you're not too exposed in terms of a risk to them, that you're going to be able to sort of to pay back the loan that you're going to be taking from them. So yeah, get advice and put a good business plan together and go to your bank. I mean, when we tried, I think we tried 3 banks. I also got my wife to go to the 3 banks as well, because she got an idea as to which bank were going to look after us better. So it's about having a relationship with a particular bank.
And just to circle back to the business plan, what advice would you give people that should be in their business plan?
Well, that's another podcast in itself. I mean, there's so many things that should be in the business plan, but you've got to make sure you've got the right business to start with, that something's going to be of interest to you. Because it's going to be your job and it's going to be your livelihood, but you've got to have some sort of passion and enthusiasm that you're going to see it through. But the business plan is going to be based upon: is there a market for your service? Can you service that particular market with your offering? And can you, at some point, whether it's not in the first year or the second year or the third year, will it actually become profitable to you, so you can actually grow the business?
How do new business owners figure out how much that they should charge?
It's very important to get that right as early as you can in whatever business you're involved in, but it's almost like a bit of a secret shopping exercise. So whatever industry you're involved in, there will be other people in your area that are going to be involved in the industry as well. So either yourself or family and friends, you need to try and get some of these other companies to come and quote or to provide you with some information about the service that they're offering. And that will give you an indication as to the good ones and the bad ones, and you can learn as much from the bad ones, thinking, I didn't like their approach, that's something I'm definitely not going to do. Or likewise, a company comes along and you like their approach. And not every industry is price related. Particularly if it's a service industry, it's not necessarily about price, but it's really important that you're not undercharging yourself, thinking that you've got to be competitive with the nearest competitor, because sometimes it's not about price, it's about service. So my advice is, make sure you're not undercharging to start with, and you're adding value to what you're offering.
I'm going to tell a story about whenever I first started up in my own business, and one of the things was the mystery. With Richard and I have already talked about this. One of my first things was I got a lot of friends, the mystery shop, the competition, the franchises, and they came out, and I had a friend who I was already treating his lawn. And he had a rather large lawn, a really big lawn, and I asked him to do a bit of mystery shopping for me. He got one of the franchises out, and they came out, and then he came back to me and he said, "Robbie, they didn't really charge me that much, or they didn't quote me that much," and I based my price on the information that he gave me. But he was actually being quite coy, because he didn't want me to charge him what the franchise was. Let's say, for example, I was quoting him £50 for his lawn. The franchise was quoting him £100 for the lawn, but he came back and he said to me, "Robbie, they're doing it for 50." So I based my prices on what he had said. So even if you're doing mystery shopping, don't take that as your only source of.
No, I think you had all your eggs in one basket.
Yes.
Look at have a multi-channel marketing research. Don't just go ask one person, Robbie.
Yeah. That's something. Whenever I'm sure there's a lot of people watching this that are starting out, and you're watching this and you want to find out how to start your business. There are an awful lot of pitfalls, and Richard does do a lot of training with people. So can you tell me about some of the success stories that you've had people you've
I
trained?
think success stories really is based upon if you're going to start a business. And I keep mentioning seek advice. Sometimes you've got to pay for that advice, and you might be paying for a training course. Let's say, for example, that training has cost you £1,000. You'll soon make that money up by charging the right price to the customer, because the person who's trained you is going to give you some advice on what you should charge. You're buying the right equipment for the job that you're doing, rather than trying to buy cheap to start with and then find you having to replace the machine several times over. So I think it's about seek advice from the people who have done it and have fallen off and have learned how to ride again. Learn from them, and sometimes you've got to pay for that advice, but you're going to save yourself a lot of time in terms of the business growing. You're going to take some of the pitfalls out early on. You're going to buy the right equipment. You're going to be offering the correct service at the right price, and you've got more chance of making money in the earlier years. And then your business will grow quicker as a result of that, and more profitably. So I think the biggest pitfall is don't do it on your own. Get advice from people.
I think to lead into that, there's a lot of different groups for everything that covers everything these days on Facebook and different community groups. And it's amazing that some of the information there that can be given. But again, you need to weigh up the information given. So just because a competitor charges X amount, their cost might be a lot higher than your cost. So you need to take that into account. And people might not always, again, be truthful about what they are charging or they're not charging. Not everyone tells the truth in business whenever they're telling you something.
Yeah.
I think it's a very...
Yeah, I think just be wary of people who are promoting their services or their knowledge on one of the social channels, because you don't know whether they are truthful or not, or whether they have the knowledge to be able to sort of give the information that they give. And I do see a lot of people that come to me saying, well, I saw this or I saw that, and I have to sort of put these myths to bed, saying, well, actually, in our industry, you're better off doing it this way around, and that's coming from me that's done it and tried and tested it. So don't believe everything that you see or read or watch on the internet, apart from this, of course.
There's a lot of people who will talk on Facebook and the different groups as if they 100% know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And often that's not the case. So by all means, use those groups for information, but don't take it as golden, and just think to yourself that just because somebody's charging £200 and someone else is charging £300, you should necessarily charge that higher rate, because they might be able to justify that higher price, and they might have a lot higher costs than yourself.
It might be a bigger business as well. So.
Yeah. And if you are competing with some larger businesses, they have the economy of scale, so they probably can buy their products cheaper than you can purchase. But don't think you've always got to compete with that company based on price. And there are examples back in the early days where we were possibly twice as expensive as some of our major competitors within the area. But it dawned on me that perhaps these people weren't buying the service on price, they were buying it on service. So they didn't really understand what the price was going to be for the particular service I was offering, but they liked the approach from how they dealt with the company, how we dealt with the quote. We were knowledgeable. We came up with a solution to their problem, and they went for it. So price actually didn't come into it. Whereas I think if you go down the pricing channel, you're only going to get lower and lower and lower, and then you'll be in the end having to have too many customers to achieve the same revenue, rather than having less customers with a greater revenue per customer.
I think, yes, especially these days, people buy convenience. The more convenient and easier you can make the service, and the greater the chance that you're going to get a sale. And I'm going to just give a wee shout out to Jobber, the sponsors, the way their system works. And if somebody contacts me online, then I get a notification and they get a notification, and we can send them reminders automatically the night before we go, and people can pay me online. And the system just really flows, and it makes it really easy. You never want, if you're starting a business, you want to make it as easy as you can to get someone to pay you. So think about that.
You do, and you want to make the whole customer journey, you want to make it as slick as possible, give them no reason to dislike your approach or dislike you or dislike your service. And that comes exactly what you say, Robbie. And having the right software means that you can, you're notified very quickly when somebody does make an inquiry, and you respond really quickly, because we're in this sort of almost sort of fast-moving consumer goods world, people want things instantly. And I think if you can react as quick as possible, there's nothing better than when you call a customer back. So I'm just responding to your inquiry you made over the weekend. When people say, "Oh, thank you for responding so quickly," already you're in the good books.
Yep. I think, yes, if you can get the customer right away,
Yeah.
and you can get them into the system, if you can get there before anyone else, then there's a good chance that you'll make that sale.
Yeah.
And as you say,
If you make a good, old adage, you only get one chance to make a first impression. And if you can make a good first impression with a timely response, an appointment that's set up to go and talk to the customer about whatever service they're looking for, advise them on the service you think that they should be having, and agree a price with them, then, as you say, Robbie, the competition don't get a chance because they like you. The whole journey has been good, so just do nothing to alienate them from you, and do everything right first time.
and even so, that's really good advice, because you don't need to have a lot of money to do that. That's just good customer service. It doesn't cost you anything.
No.
One thing we was talking about before when we met up just for a quick chat for the coffee, when you was talking about going out and quoting people and saying try and get everything done in that visit, but you're saying set out one day for doing your quoting. And you're saying about being dressed smarter. Would that go with say if you're in a trade, and would you wear the clothes that you'll be wearing for your job, so that to match the industry? Or
I don't know what industry we're talking about. Let's say we're plastering.
yeah,
I probably wouldn't go to a quote in my plastering gear with plaster on my face, having just come from a job where I've been plastering.
yeah,
So I think that's about you get one chance to make a first impression. By all means, have a dirty plasterer's van,
yeah,
but I would probably go into the house dressed smart, because if you're dressed smart, you give you give that customer a very good first impression when they first open the door to see you. You got whether you wear the tie on, whatever, doesn't matter, as long as you're dressed smartly. So I think the question you were coming from is, do you do work and quotes on the same day, or do you just go out doing quoting? I personally think if you're going out doing quoting, you're more likely to dress smarter. You'll have more time to do the quote justice, because you're not then either trying to squeeze in the quote at the end of the day and you're tired and you want to get home. And I think you've got more chance of winning more business by being in that quoting frame of mind.
you're just concentrating on that day for
absolutely.
You're not worried about what jobs you've got to get to get the day done.
Sometimes that has to be at weekends. If you're busy 9 to 5 on Monday to Friday, then sometimes you can you dedicate your Saturdays to go out doing your quote jobs.
Before just to circle back again, what do you think for somebody starting up in business, the best way to advertise themselves, to find their customers?
I think it's a really important thing to do, because you can have the best business possible, but if people don't know you exist, then what's the point? You sit there in your shop window and nobody goes past your shop. You've got to make sure that people are aware that you exist. And some of the cheapest and most effective forms to start with is probably leafleting an area, if it's a service you're offering. Newspaper adverts are very short-lived. Parish magazines, I'm a big fan of. If you've got parish magazines, people tend to read their own parish magazine from cover to cover, because people do like to support local businesses.
Yeah.
And particularly, that's even more relevant now post-COVID, where people were really trying to support their local businesses because their local businesses supported them during that particular COVID period. So I think parish magazines are a really important source, and they don't cost an awful lot of money. But advertising, clearly you've got to have a website, because if people do hear about you, then your brochure is going to be the internet, and your brochure is going to be your website on the internet. So it's important to have a website which represents what you do without being too complicated, but just a little bit about you, so that people are dealing with you, not a sort of a banner company. And there's got to be a very clear point of contact. They can actually then make contact with you through the website, and have a few reviews in there, so people can sort of to work out you are a legitimate business, and a lot of people have enjoyed having your service.
I built my own business on leaflets, but I'm wondering has that moved on? But the good thing about the leaflets is that generally, if you're just starting out in business, unless you have a pretty big budget to start with, you're cash poor and time rich. You have a lot of time, so you can flyers whenever you're starting out are the cheapest form of advertising. Yeah. Apart from they just take a lot of time. However, these days, I imagine, I've tried Google AdWords myself. I suppose depends what industry you're in. I found Google AdWords for lawn care was just too expensive. But I know a lot of people are moving to Facebook advertising, and they're getting pretty good success with that.
Facebook is working well, yeah. Facebook is working well in terms of it doesn't cost you an awful lot, but you can reach the sort of people you want to reach. So you can very much categorize the sort of person who you think is going to like your service. So you can be very specific as to how you go to. So in terms of £100 spent on Facebook, you probably achieve £1,000 revenue in new business in certain industries. But going back to your leaflets, I think there's another thing you can do, not just leafleting, but obviously you can then choose the housing estates you want to leaflet. So you can pick and choose the top sort of customer who you think might like your service. But something we used to do as well, we would employ a door knocker to go around door knocking an area after we'd done leaflets.
And do you find that I've always thought about door. The thing with, because we do the lawn care, so lawn care works really well. But if all the customers are bunched up together, but I've always been concerned about somebody knocking on the door. Is it very intrusive to the customer?
I've done a little bit of it, and I'm not that comfortable doing it. But we would employ a company who would do door knocking. Yeah, and it's not intrusive. They're very very passive in terms of how they knock at the door. They'll step back. They'll say, "Oh, we recently dropped a leaflet around a few days ago with an offer on the service we're offering. Was it of interest to you?" They'll either say, "No, I didn't see it," or "I'm not interested, go away," or "Yes, I did see it and I was going to contact you." And it's amazing how many customers you can pick up as a result of following up on an offer that you sent around, because you've got a legitimate reason to go and knock on that door because you've given them an offer a few weeks ago. You're just following up, was it of interest to them? So our door knocker would go out from, let's say, 4 till 8 on a Thursday afternoon, and you'd pick up 10, 15 good leads that are all going to be quite close to each other. We would then follow that up with a visit the next day, and we might convert half of them into actual sort of long-term customers. So it's quite cost effective.
And what are your thoughts on offering a discount to get a service started off? Whenever we started, I used to do 20% off the first treatment.
Definitely.
Because if you think we sell 3 services in a set, we sell the lawn treatments, the scarifying and the aerating, and the lawn treatment was at the lower end of the scale. So most of the time you were selling higher ticket items as well, along with the lawn treatment, and it's only off the first one.
100%. I totally agree with that, because I think when we were doing lawn treatments, we were probably twice as expensive as some of the competition that we were competing with. So let's say, for example, we were £30 a treatment and our competitor was £15 a treatment. We would always give the customer 2 for the price of 1. So in their mind, they were thinking they were getting 2 treatments of £15 each. So they almost like overcome that pricing issue. And then once they got used to using you, that £15 was long gone in their memory, and they got used to the fact that it was £30 a treatment thereon. So I'd always offer something.
And then they're happy with the service, so they don't mind the increase.
They're not bothered about that. That price is then, as I said, I don't think a lot of industries are that price sensitive when it comes to the service side of it, but they want service. And as long as they can see how good you are, getting your foot in the door is really important.
On the leaflets, one thing I've noticed, even in my area, leaflets that come through the door, a lot of them do have, like, if you have to keep hold of the leaflet, but it will say with this leaflet you'll get a discount of such and such. Or
it's really important. Yeah, less is more on leaflets, but also don't say offer closes on March the 31st, because you might be left with loads of leaflets. Offer closes in 10 days is a good thing to put on them. Then those leaflets are going to last a lot longer, rather than a specific date. Otherwise, they're out of date and they've got to chuck those away.
The only problem with that, offer closes in 10 days. There's no date on it, so a customer can come along and say, "Well, I only got it last week." But
as long as I come back to you, you're still going to want it, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yes, because whenever I started doing the flyers and the leaflets, I had to put until March 2020, if you like.
Yeah.
But then, if you don't get all those flyers out, then it's a waste. So then I just started putting it until April, 1st of April, and then and then you could reuse them every year. People didn't really get caught up on it too much.
Yeah, and then for that very first, when they do make an inquiry, in that very first visit, the question has always arisen: is my pricing right? Am I too expensive or am I too cheap? And one of the acid tests, or one of the questions I would always ask somebody, if they say to me, "Am I too cheap or too expensive?" If I say, "Okay, if you go and do 10 quotes next week, how many are going to say yes to your quote?" If they say 10, say, "Well done, you're obviously very good at what you do, or you're possibly too cheap." If they came back and said, 3 or 4 would say yes, then there's probably an issue. Either they're not promoting their services, or they're not being very clear to the customer, and the customer's unsure about what they're offering, or they're too expensive. So I think somewhere in between, if you're getting sort of 7 to 8 out of 10, people are saying yes to your quote, then you probably got it about right in terms of you're not too expensive, you're not too cheap, and you're pretty good at converting the sale when you're there.
What's the easiest way for somebody that's started up in their business to work out their costs ahead of time?
It depends on the business you're in, but you've got to, if you're offering a service, then which involves applying a product. In our industry, lawn care is something which is very tangible. That's all very well because we're quite a high margin business. So if you're charging £100 for a treatment, your product's probably only costing you £15 for that particular treatment. That's only half of the story, because the other half of those are your variable costs. That gives you the gross margin. You've got to look at your fixed costs, and if you can keep those in check, then you can make a profit. But if your fixed costs are too high, you've got a unit that you're storing your product, you've got an office that you work out of, you've got a van, and you've got staff, then that sort of 85% gross margin can soon whittle down to a net profit of 5 or 10%. So keep those fixed costs in check. Don't go too heavy on the fixed costs in the first year or two. Just sometimes you might have to hire equipment in, you might have to borrow equipment, because if you go too big too soon, then you're not going to make the money out of it, and you put too much pressure on yourself.
While we're talking about costs, apart from what advice would you give somebody if they were in business and they seemed that they just couldn't make a go of it and they weren't earning enough money? Now I know they can come and do one of your courses, but what advice would you give somebody apart from coming to see me? Apart from coming to see you.
You've got to work out why, and that's, once again, it might be just if you're not going to pay to go on a particular course, you can talk to people. There are other lawn care companies or other companies within your industry that you can talk to who will be more than happy to give you advice, because I'm sure you'll not be treading on their toes, but just find out why. And it might be you're not charging enough. It might be you're not charging or offering enough services to those customers. And just by increasing your prices, offering more services that you do, but you haven't told your customers you're offering these services, can suddenly improve your revenue per customer without gaining any more customers. And all of a sudden, you're making money.
The worst thing a customer, to me anyway, whenever a customer says to me, "God, Robbie, I didn't know you did that service," that's whenever you're letting yourself down.
Absolutely.
So what's the best way to keep your customers up to date with any new services that you're offering, or just to let people know that you do different services? How would you?
The easiest way, and this obviously depends upon when you start to get a nucleus of customers, but the easiest way is via one of these sort of marketing email newsletters, like the Constant Contact, through MailChimp, one of those, because they can be very informative to the customer, to educate them as to what services you're offering, but also educate the customer as to what height they should be mowing their grass at, or what they should be doing to their lawn this time of the year. And by the way, if you don't have your patio or weeds treated by us, we do offer this as a service. And just from that one email alone, there's no doubt about it, you will get a lot more business coming in, because it's easy for the customer to respond to it. They haven't got to pick a phone up. They just click on a link on that email. Yes, Robbie, I'm interested in this service. Yes, I'm interested in that. Or how much would that be? And just from a cost of an email, which I think is about £7 or £8 a month, you'll get hundreds of pounds worth of business back as a result of it. But just to say, keep them informed. And that's the most efficient way of keeping them informed, via an email monthly or at least quarterly newsletter.
I'm going to circle back to something we were talking about, how to find out the best places to go to if you're thinking about starting up a business.
Yeah.
And we nearly touched on it, which would be for us, the UK Lawn Care Association, joining the association. So whenever I was trying to grow my business from one part-timer into a full-timer, I really struggled to have enough winter work, and going to the likes of the association and their conference and talking to like-minded individuals, that gave me the information that I needed, so as I could take Jason on full-time, or take any employee, before that was someone else, but to take on an employee full-time. So I think that's...
When there are associations in all sorts of industries, and you will find that if people... There's always somebody that knows more than you, and there's always somebody that's prepared to give you advice to help your business become as good as theirs. And within the same industry that we're involved in, people are quite happy to share, because in lawn care, there's plenty of lawns to go around, but not by me giving you this information isn't going to affect my business. And likewise, you giving somebody else information isn't going to affect your business. But it's to share that advice for the good cause to help everybody become better at what they do. But yeah, certainly be part of an association, and obviously I would obviously promote the UK Lawn Care Association, but within any industry, there'll be some trade body that you can get good advice from people that have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 years ahead of your journey.
So I'm just going to interrupt you there.
Yeah.
Richard was he was the founding member of the UK Lawn Care Association, so and you're now the honorary?
I'm the honorary president,
Yep.
but I set it up just because I was a man in a van, didn't have any friends.
The joys of being self-employed, man and man.
And so who could I talk to about this? And back in 2000, it was a very, very new industry. I didn't have anybody to talk to. I thought we need a little club where we can talk to other people to help share ideas with each other and help all grow a business together. So that was back in 2003, 2004. Now in 2024, we've got over 100 members that have an annual conference and we share ideas. And I think everybody that's part of the association gets an awful lot out of it because we can learn from other people that are a bit further along the journey than the next person is.
Whenever I went to it, I was amazed at the amount of information that people shared. But the thing is, especially with lawn care, so you might have your business 30 miles down the road. We might only overlap in a very small area, and you'd be happy enough to share information with me.
Yeah.
And equally the other way. So just the amount of information you can get from the networking, I think that'd be really good.
Yeah.
If you're watching this podcast and you think one of your friends would get some value from it, if you could send it to them either with a text or an email. Likewise, make sure to smash the like button for me down below or like the podcast. Now, running your own business can be really stressful and all-consuming. What are your tips for managing your time and making sure that you have a good work-life balance?
It is it's very, very different to being employed. And the difference is when you're employed, you are obviously concentrating on work during the office hours, but maybe you're not so bothered about it come 5 o'clock or come the weekend. The difference with running your own business is that you are thinking about it a lot of the time, because if you're not thinking about it, nobody else is. And if you stop thinking about it, then your business can start to go a bit stale. So it can be stressful, but you've got to get that balance. You are probably working from home as well, so you're almost like surrounded by work the whole time. You just got to try and have time to switch off, which is a potential negative. But the positive is running your own business is that you are in control to a certain degree as to your lifestyle. If you want to take time off to go and watch the kids' school sports day or the school assembly or whatever, you're totally at will, the liberty to go and do that yourself. But there are pressures that come with running a business, because if you stop, then your whole business and your income stops. So there are stresses and strains, but you've got to get that balance. You've got to have good support from the family. If you do decide you're going to embark upon starting your own business, making sure your wife or partner or family are supportive of you and understand what you're going through, because you may want some financial assistance from them as well. But there are stresses and strains that are associated with it. But from what I've learned over the last 20 odd years of running a business, I wouldn't have it any other way. I probably still don't earn as much as I did when I was an employed person, but I get much more enjoyment out of running my own business and the satisfaction that you've built something from nothing, all down to your own hard work.
Whenever the money starts to come in, Richard, what advice would you give people on how to manage it? That might be software, or that might be bank accounts, or everything else.
Yeah.
And I suppose as well, a lot's going to play into that, depending on the type of structure. Are you limited or sole trader?
Yeah.
Would you like to tell
I
us
think
your
when
thoughts?
the money comes in, make sure that you do manage it, and make sure that you're constantly looking and measuring it against the original cash flow forecast and the profit and loss that you first put together. Particularly if you're in a service industry, and harping back to lawn care, we used to get a lot of customers to prepay in advance for the season's worth of lawn care. And I know some people that have had this prepay money that's come in, but they've spent it, but it's only going to come in once, so they spent it too soon, and then the rest of the year they haven't got money coming in. So just you've got to be able to manage that money coming in, manage the cash flow, and making sure you can pay any people you've got to pay with the money you've got in the bank. So it's just about managing the income and making sure that you've got enough money to pay your debts.
I think I'm going to touch something. So whenever I first started my business, I had a personal account, but I operated as Premier Lawns NI, and people were sending me checks to Premier Lawns NI, and you can use a personal account it's frowned upon. The banks don't like you doing it. They prefer you using a named account. However, I was using a personal account, but the problem arises if you call yourself a name. So I was calling myself Premier Lawns, and people were sending me checks to Premier Lawns.
Yeah.
Then
You need a separate account.
You can't get it cash. So yes, you're better. I think you're best from the off, starting with a business.
So whatever business name you
account,
set yourself up as, set yourself up as this particular business, and we can talk about the sole trader versus limited company as well in a minute. But yeah, set yourself up with a bank and have a completely separate bank account. So if you're writing checks, which doesn't happen anymore, if you're receiving money, it goes directly into your business bank account rather than being confused with your other income or whatever from your own bank account. So the sole trader versus limited company, most people tend to go down the sole trader route to start with. It's simpler, easier to manage from a tax point of view, but if you set yourself up as Robbie Lynn or Premier Lawns or whatever, that's very well. But if you ever wanted to become a limited company, you've obviously got to make sure that limited company name is available, because then you can't call yourself Premier Lawns Limited because somebody else might already have that. So if you do set yourself up as a sole trader and you call yourself a particular name, just make sure that name hasn't already been taken as a limited company. So in the future, if you do want to become limited, it allows you to be able to use that particular name.
I think as well, that's something maybe we've missed at the start of the podcast. If you're starting up your own business, Rule 101 is to make sure that the website and the domain name and everything else is available.
Yeah.
Whenever I first set up, I decided to call myself Premier Lawns. It turned out there was more than one Premier Lawns. So, but fortunately, they were all in England, but it meant that the domain wasn't there. I had to buy the domain later on at a marked up price.
Yeah.
So another thing, if you're thinking about starting up your own business, you want so being Belfast Lawn Care is going to be really good for search results, as opposed to Robbie Lynn's or Robbie's Lawns. Robbie's Lawns might have a bit of a hook, but if somebody goes on to Google, because these days everything's on Google, TikTok, Facebook, you want you want the SEO to be built into your name. I think is key for a lot of things as well.
And that comes down to the planning when you're first starting a business. Is thinking of a name that's suitable for your business, and don't make it too personal. Don't make it too much about yourself, but make it something that can be memorable. And when it is memorable, it's a lot easier for other people to remember it and refer to it. And then make sure, as Robbie said, that there's a domain name available for that particular name. Get that registered. Making sure that there's the limited go to company's house. Is that name already registered as a limited company, which then would then limit your growth in the future, because then you couldn't call yourself the particular company that you decided to call yourself.
Even if you choose not to go limited at the start, I would nearly advise that you get that and you run it as a dormant account.
I would say so. Yeah.
So that would probably a good chance to lead into bookkeepers and accountants. Generally, if you're starting up your own business, what I would advise is to go and see 2 or 3 different accountants and have a chat with them. They will give you a free half hour, and I'm no good with numbers, so I have a bookkeeper and an accountant.
Yeah. An accountant is important because you are paying for services to help run your business, and an accountant can soon justify the cost, whether it's £500 a year, £1,000 a year, it doesn't matter. They'll keep you on the straight and narrow to make sure you're keeping the right side of taxation law. They'll give you some good advice as to how best to structure your business. Are you better off as a sole trader? Are you better off as a limited company? And it's forever changing, and they'll keep up to date as to how best it is for you to run your business going forwards, whether it's now time to move from a sole trader to a limited company. If there's 2 of you in the business, then 2 of you could be directors and you could take out dividends rather than taking out a salary from the business. So that there's different tax structures and different situations for different people. So yeah, sole trader versus limited company is important. The partnership is a more of a tricky one, but certainly I would look at sole trader to start with, and with a view to becoming limited at some point in the future. If your business is something where there is risk to the public or anybody else, then a limited company is quite a good way of going. So if ever you did cause some major accident, then the person suing you would be suing the limited company and not suing you, hence the name limited liability.
When you're saying about picking the company name, and obviously don't make it too personal, but how does that come up when searching on searches online? Like if you go onto Google, say if a lot of people like, if I go onto, I just say gardeners nearby, would that affect having your name, or you can have something in the name to link that, because not everybody's going to say gardeners in the name of the business, sort of thing.
No, that would come down to how your business is classified as.
Yeah.
So then if there was lots of reference to gardening on your website, that would obviously help as well.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't go too far down the road of this. A lot of people charge a lot of money for search engine optimization on their websites. It's a bit of a dark art. Apologies if anybody's involved in SEO, but you can spend a lot of money per month making sure your website is on the first page of Google.
Yeah.
Whereas the pay-per-click or the Google Ads is probably a better way to go. Making reference to the UK Lawn Care Association, there's 100 lawn care companies on the UK Lawn Care Association website. So if your company doesn't come up on page 1, chances are the UK Lawn Care Association will come up, because there's so many companies on that and it's constantly being refreshed. And that's what Google likes, is that it likes an older, mature website and with lots of content on it.
And then the links coming in and out. The links
Just
coming in
really
and out.
helps.
So
Yeah.
linking to other websites is really important, but it's also really hard if you're just a brand new website. You know, it's really hard.
But what you can do seasonally to make sure you are on page 1 is you can have the Google Ads on certain times of the year that are important years for you, or important months for you during that particular calendar, and you could have a campaign where you're going to allow a certain amount of money to be spent each day to ensure that you're getting a lot of customers finding you during that particular campaign that you want to be visible.
Yeah.
I think while we're talking about Google, one of the important things for Google is to have your Google business profile up to date.
Absolutely.
Ask your customers to review you. Just post pictures of your work. I'd say if you ask your customers to post pictures, that review will carry more weight than somebody just giving great service. If they can talk about the service a little, then that review has more weight to it.
Really, really important, that is, because if you're searching, as you mentioned there, Jason, if you're searching sort of gardeners near me or bricklayers near me or something near me, then the whole list will appear on that left-hand side page. And what will also appear next to the name of that company will be how many reviews they've got and how many are 5-star reviews. And you're probably going to bypass somebody with 1 review, but you might take seriously somebody with 40 reviews. So it's really important to get as many reviews as you possibly can. And one really good way of doing it is, we mentioned about the email newsletter. If you can send an email newsletter to your customers and then asking them to submit a review based upon the service you've given them, it's really easy for them, because you give them a link. So all they've got to do is click the button on the link and they're automatically at that page to write a review, and make it really easy, keep it easy for them.
I've always found as well the best time to ask for a review, if you turned up to the customer and you've done a good job.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
After you've done that good job and the customer send you, Robbie, that's a fantastic service.
Yeah.
Would you mind helping me out and do a bit?
Strike while the iron is hot, for sure.
Yes,
Definitely.
Just get in there and ask right away.
Yeah.
Can you give me a review?
Yeah.
What do you want to say? I'll always just tell them to tell a few lies.
Most people are happy. If you've done a good job, most people are happy too. Yeah.
Yeah. Irish humor, just So ask.
Yeah. Also, and if you get the odd negative review, and sometimes you might get a negative review, that's also important as to how you handle that negative review, because then people will see you are a genuine business, that you get the odd problems, but it's how you've dealt with that problem is important as well.
Google actually apparently add more weight to your reviews if you have 10 5-star reviews, that's worth less in terms of search terms than having like 4 stars.
Yeah. Okay.
Between them all. So just a little fact for you. If you have a really bad review and you don't think that sometimes a customer or your competition might be doing something nefarious, if you have a review that you don't believe is legitimate, the best thing to do is not to answer it at all. You can report it to Google. If you interact with that post in any way, then Google apparently see that as being legitimate, and you can't get it removed afterwards. So if you do have a 1-star review, and if you think that customer is unconnected to you, or if you think somebody's just been silly, then you're best to contact Google. But always respond to anything negative. If it's a customer and they've pointed something out, try and take that as positive.
And even outside of Google, putting the internet to one side, if a customer has got an issue with something you've done, it's probably just some sort of confusion or some sort of miscommunication. And it's amazing that if somebody has an issue, they don't probably expect you to deal with it. The fact you deal with it and solve it then that customer stays with you for a lot longer because they didn't expect you to do anything about it.
Yeah.
And that's what the service industry is about. It's all very well servicing them in the good times, but if you deal with problems and overcome it, then they'll stay with you for a long while.
If you have a customer and they've had a bad experience for whatever reason, it might have been your fault or not your fault, but you're judged on how you put things right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the time to go over and above.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just have to bite your lip and go with it.
And people don't expect to be looked after as well as you're going to look after them. And when you do look after them, they're pleasantly surprised, and they'll tell their friends and family that how good they were looked after.
Yeah.
I say flipping the bad experience into a good experience.
Yeah. Turn it around.
Just turn it around.
Yeah.
I was going to talk to you a bit more about money. Because whenever I first started up my business, I started it on a real budget. You know, money was really tight, and I'm sure there'll be people watching this whenever they're possibly thinking about starting up your own business and you don't have a lot of money. And there's times where you don't have money to pay for yourself. So it used to be whenever I first started up, I'd have taken all the money out, and then a bill would have come in, and you didn't have money, so you were sort of after. That went on for a short while. Then I found it's easier just to pay myself a small wage, and then build up a set of funds. I always joke that the money you earn being self-employed never belongs to you because it belongs to someone else.
The next person.
Have you got any tips for anyone apart from doing that, or if you're just starting up your own business, what's the best way to manage your money?
There's no doubt about it. In the early years of starting a business, you're going to have less money coming in than perhaps your previous employed position or your previous job, whatever you did. And you've just got to be realistic that you may have to sacrifice that holiday that year. You may have to sort of put on hold buying something you thought you were going to have to buy, because you've got to make sure that as much possible of the funds that you've got is going into the business to help sort of prop it up, because it's not going to be profitable, or you're not going to have as much money coming in as the first year as you probably had from your previous position. So it's just pulling in favours. I remember when I first started, I had a car and a trailer. So I couldn't afford a van at the start with, so I started lawn care with a car and a trailer. Then 2 or 3 months into it, I needed a van, couldn't afford a van, borrowed some money from my brother-in-law. Back then, £10,000 for a van seems quite cheap now. So I borrowed the money for them, paid back $1,000 a month. So you just got to just do what you can, because you know at some point in the next 1 or 2 or 3 years that you're going to be a lot more comfortable. You just got to just tighten your belt a little bit in the first year and make sure the money that you have got is spread out a little bit easier, and you can't be too to spend the money you would have done had you been in an employed position.
And just while we're talking about money, so some businesses grow on debt. Do you think that just comes down to people's individual adverse to risk or not, you know?
Yeah.
Should you build your business in debt? Or I've always just tried to grow with the money that I have, but I think I've maybe held myself up in a lot of times. But
it's a very good point, and I think I'm like you.
When you say building on debt, you mean borrowing in from the bank?
Borrowing in from the bank to grow.
To grow.
To grow, either to buy lots of fancy new tools, or
I try to live within my means rather than live beyond my means, and with that, I try to borrow as little as I possibly could.
Yes, if I can't afford it today, what makes you think I can afford it tomorrow?
Yeah,
that's the way.
Yeah. So, but you got to look at some of the very big businesses out there, and people do borrow a lot of money, and they will take the risk and accept that if it fails, it fails. But their business might grow a lot quicker. But to me, if you want the work-life balance and want to have be able to sleep at night, having such a debt around you or around me didn't sit comfortable with me. So I tended to try and grow it within my means. With the money came in, was reinvested in the business rather than borrowing too much money from the banks in the first place.
Would that depend on the industry as well, growing it big?
Of course it would,
Like say with lawn cares, you'd want to probably make that more personal growth rather than going massive and not having that engagement with the customer as yourself.
Yeah, lawn care, you can probably get away with about total £6,000, I reckon, plus to get your equipment, which is a couple of knapsacks, a fertiliser spreader, a mower, a scarifier, and an aerator. Those are basically the tools of the trade you're going to need, and a van.
And a van. Just to touch, because thank you for coming over. To touch on, you said about if anybody wants to come to you to do some training, what sort of costs is it involved for somebody to come and do some training, or do you want to tell people how that works?
Well, the training works. I either train people on a one-to-one basis. So I get a lot of people that are leaving a particular industry that have either been made redundant or want to change a career, and they'll come to me for maybe 2 days training initially. They'll learn some of the basics on what machines they're going to need, what the service is in terms of what grasses are, what soils are, how to treat a lawn, how much to charge, and what products to apply. So that's over sort of 2 days, and then there's often a refresher 2 days that follows a few months later. So, but I would tailor a course to any particular given circumstance, whether it's a company that's got a lot of technicians that want training, or whether it's a person who's a gardener that wants to add lawn care to their particular portfolio of treatments, or whether it's somebody with completely no experience at all that I'm teaching from day one. And I've got many examples of people that have done just that and have got successful businesses 1, 2, 3 years down the line.
I'm gonna say that if you're watching this, we have somebody else coming on the podcast that you recently trained who's had pretty good success in his first year.
Probably Mark.
Yep.
Mark from the Lawnologist. I think he'll be posting something with you very shortly. But here's an example of somebody who was in an industry that he was suffering with a bit of stress from and wasn't enjoying it. Wanted a complete new change of career. Came to see me in August 2022 with a view to starting a business in the spring of 23. But after the training, called me back and said, I think I'm going to leave my job now because I really do enjoy this industry from what I've learned from you for the first couple of days. So back then he started his job, started in lawn care in August 2022 and just hit the ground running. Timing is everything in this industry. We're a very weather-related industry. He started in the autumn following a really, really dry, hot summer of the 22. So there's a lot of lawns that needed a lot of renovation. So it was a perfect time to start, which did come into our calculation saying, well, normally I'd recommend people start in the spring, but based upon the fact we had a really, really difficult summer and a lot of lawns needed some attention, there'd probably be quite a big market to start your lawn care business this autumn. And he did, and he hit the ground running, and he's done ever so well ever since, 18 months on. And I'm sure Mark will tell you in his own words how he's done that.
That's so anybody watching this on YouTube, that video is going to be on after this one, so just click through. If you're watching this on Spotify or listening to it on Apple iTunes, then it's going to be in the show.
Right.
The show listen, so make sure to check that out. Richard, thank you very much for coming to our studio just outside Belfast. I know you flew over from England to come and see us, so Richard's come quite a way, and thank you for coming. And he's our first guest on the podcast. So if you've enjoyed this, just as you can, make sure to smash that like button. And if you think any friends will enjoy this podcast or get some value from it, make sure to text it to them or email and give us a wee shout out on your socials about it. But thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Robbie. Thanks, Jason. Thanks for inviting me over. Thank you. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you.